Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning, Eve. You're a bit quiet. Or that might
Oh,
be my local volume.
yeah, it might be the volume adjusting. How's that?
That's great.
Is it coming up in volume? Great. Well, welcome, everyone, particularly those of you who might be in time zones where this is an unusual hour to be awake and speaking. Welcome to the working group that's focused on reliable and available wireless, otherwise known as RAW. I'm Eve Schuler, and who you heard before was my co-chair, Rick Taylor. And it's Tuesday, November 9th, and this is the IETF 112. We're going to get going now. If you could advance the slide, but one slide. I'd like to just review a few items that we should note well in the tradition of the IETF, and start out by stating that there's a whole collection of policies that the IETF has established, and this basically will review some of them at a high level, and most importantly, there are policies on a whole range of topics here, and of course, by participating in the IETF, you agree to follow these processes and policies that have been laid out. One that's quite important is, of course, if you are aware of any IETF contribution that's covered by patents or patent applications owned or controlled by you or your sponsor, that's a quite important topic to disclose earlier than later. And the IETF goes to great lengths to identify what is meant by a contribution and what is meant by participation. And as a participant in or attendee to an IETF activity, you also acknowledge that any written audio, video, and photographic records or communications of meetings are going to be made public. Yet on the other hand, all of your personal information that you provide will be handled according to the privacy policies of the IETF. And I personally believe that this last bullet is perhaps the most important item to note well, is that we really encourage participants and attendees to agree to be respectful to one another as part of this community. Of course, if you have any questions there, we have links included in our slides. Of course, since COVID began, we have been conducting these meetings strictly online, and just to remind you that these sessions are recorded, this one as well, and that once you basically begin speaking and participating, that in some ways you have agreed to, once you unmute your mic or turn on your video, that you are in agreement with the policies of the IETF. For these meetings, please keep your audio muted and your video off when you're not presenting or speaking. And when you're speaking, please introduce yourself, although it's lovely to see that MeetEcho does integrate identification underneath your video and underneath your audio when you are participating. So let's get to the next slide. As you can see, there are a whole range of policies. Should you have any questions, I definitely encourage you, if you have not read them before, to investigate them at some point sooner than later. There's an ombudsman for the IETF, and of course, as working group chairs and ADs, we also are happy to advise. Next slide. You are here, so you must have figured out how to use MeetEcho. But if not, maybe you've consulted these slides. I think how you had it before was a little better in terms of the presentation, right?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, thank you very much. The great news also is MeetEcho integrates not only the blue sheets, but additionally the chat, or what used to be considered, IM or Jabber. And so we encourage you to make use of that capability. The other nice attribute is that there are live minutes, meaning that they are shared, and we encourage you to collaborate. In fact, if there is someone who would like to offer their services to lead the minute taking, we would welcome hearing from you. I'll just pause here for a moment to see if there's somebody who would like the honors.
I will add at this point that normally, or up until this point, Ethan has always done a fantastic job of doing that, and unfortunately he can't make it this time. So don't expect the vast quality, good quality minutes that we've had previously, unless you're willing to help create them.
And I'm sure you will do as fabulous a job, but yes, we have been really blessed. So if Ethan is on, we just our gratitude for many sessions of IETF note-taking. And of course, so if you click on the CodeMD integrated, I'm trying to see, there it is. It's the fourth button at the top. It's integrated note-taking tool along the top banner. You can switch to the view and edit away, please. Our mailing list is raw at ietf.org, and our meeting materials, many of which are also available through the tool here, but you can get to them and click through on the link shown here below. Next slide. We have a light agenda this session, but we have quite a few items coming to maturation, quite a few documents. We will hear from Pascal both about the technologies draft and the architecture draft, and followed by a draft that he has recently submitted, an individual contribution, which has aired in the DetNet working group on IP version 6 options. And we will hear a summary of the latest changes to the use cases document by Carlos Bernardos, and followed by an update on LDAX document by Niels Morrow. And hopefully we'll have quite a bit of time for open mic. Over to you, Rick.
Okay, so as Eve said, we've got a bunch of documents that are now, their status has changed since the IETF111. So LDAX is currently in the IESG review, and I know some edits have been requested, and I know the author team has made some changes. So Niels will go through hopefully some of the changes and why they were made, and whether they were substantive or not. I don't believe they were, hence we are still in IESG review. Obviously, for those of you less familiar with the way a document moves through a working group and through into the IESG and off to become an RFC eventually, editorial changes, requests for comment from that come out of the IESG review are normally handled at that stage. If there is a substantive problem, that means the document actually needs to really go back to be chewed over by the working group, then it will drop back to being a normal working group document. But as we understand it at the moment, the comments reviewed as part of the comments received as part of the ISG review for LDAX have been clarification or minor updates. When Niels, if you have not read the latest update of the LDAX document, please pay attention to Niels's presentation about what has changed. If you, as a member of the working group, think that the change is substantive and needs to be properly looked at by the working group, that is your chance really to raise that at the mic and say. Otherwise, the working group documents we have at the moment is in no particular order. The architecture document, which Pascal's going to talk about, OAM support for RAW technologies, and the use cases document, they are still not ready for ISG unless the author team wishes to raise that currently. Again, that is a working group decision about whether it's ready for review, and that obviously that decision will be taken to the list, but it's worth making sure that you have read the latest drafts, if any of those have been updated. Also, we have, after the last IETF meeting, we have adopted the industrial requirements personal draft from Sophia Ruta, Sophia and her team. That document has yet to be renamed, but it has been officially adopted. When it's renamed, it will be draft IETF raw industrial requirements. Where there was some discussion about crossover between that document and the use cases document. Some content may boil off into use cases. There may be some flow in the other direction as well, but that's the point of a working group document, so that's perfectly normal. Carlos Bernardos still has his MEC and his joint selection raw MEC drafts, which as of the last IETF, he was still working on. I'm not sure if there's been any updates. I'm sure Carlos can answer that. Annoyingly, while presenting, I can't see the Jabber chat in case Eve, shout if Carlos has got a comment about that. But otherwise, we're not really looking at these at the moment because Carlos is still working on them, as far as I'm aware. So this is the status of the milestones as they stood at the last IETF meeting. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I accidentally removed Carlos from the meeting queue. Please put yourself back in. That was not my intent. Yes. And now I'm trying to figure out. Oh, here you are. Go ahead, Carlos.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the MEC individual drafts, I'm still working on some new additions, and in any case, I will appreciate if any member from the working group can provide some feedback. Of course, that will be greatly appreciated.
But you're not asking for working group adoption yet. You still want to do a little bit more personal work on it first. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
That's fine. That's fine. So the milestones as they stood at the last IETF look like this on the screen. So everything green actually were new additions to the milestones from what stood before the last IETF meeting. The little ticks obviously mean we've met that milestone, which is great. The ones with a red date are things which are slipping. Either we haven't even created the document, nobody has put forward a personal draft to even begin adoption. For example, the last item on the list, which is a charter item for an evaluation of existing IETF tech and a gap analysis document, with good reason. The other ones are dates we assigned at the last IETF thinking, oh, we might have this ready, but obviously it is now November and they're not ready. So one of the discussions I think it's probably worth having in the working group, particularly as we get a presentation on most of these documents, is to discuss when we should set a tentative date for when we think these documents might be ready. I understand it will be a guess, but a guess is better than having a milestone that is blatantly wrong. If you look at the milestones on the data tracker, you'll see that there are more on this list than there are officially signed off by John Scudder, RAD. Reason being is that John quite rightly looked at some of the dates proposed at the last IETF meeting and the current date and raised the question of whether we were being a bit ambitious or whether the dates were just unrealistic. So I would like to think collectively we can answer his questions, and if we can assign a slightly better estimate on when these documents are going to be expected to be ready, then we can adjust the date on the milestone on the data tracker, and John can hopefully click the accept button. I don't think, and John, feel free to step forwards and tell us we're wrong, but I don't think there's any question of whether the milestone is valid or not. The question is whether we can achieve it at the date we assigned. So the critical ones, just to recap, are the use cases, the technologies, the industrial requirements, the architecture, and the OAM document. So we're not hearing about the industrial requirements because, having spoken offline with the industrial requirements author team, they want to do a bit of work. They've had a busy summer and haven't had a chance to work much on it. So in my opinion, with my chair hat on, I think it will be after the use cases document. So if we can get a good date for the use cases document, or a guess for a date for the use cases document, I would be happy to add 2-3 months to that, and then say the industrial requirements document is probably ready at that point. Any comment from the floor on that as a way forwards? Just check the chat as well.
And John is saying that he does agree regarding the milestones.
Yeah, just spotted that. Brilliant. Thank you, John. So I'm clicking next in the wrong window. Sorry. Okay, so pretty much on time. Over to the presentations on drafts. Now, I know, Pascal, you've got a clash today and you are jumping between RAW and somewhere else. So it's up to you to keep an eye on the time, but please, people, please be aware when asking questions.
Yeah, it should be good. Don't worry. I will be speaking at best in 90 minutes. Well, now it's more like an hour, but I guess we have ample time.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay.
Are you okay to present the slides, or do you want me to?
I would prefer that you just call them if you don't mind.
No problem. Let me swap. Stop sharing that.
Yeah.
Oh, this user interface confuses me at times.
Well, otherwise, I can bring them up as well.
There you go.
Just,
There you
you were on it already. Okay. So yes, let's start by the architecture. Please, next slide. So as you know, this document covers two things. By the title, it has architecture and framework. And that's kind of a bit confusing, because the architecture is something that you do at the beginning. Here is what I want to build. And here are the main directions and how it's going to work. And the framework is more, here is what we built. And here are the components that we put together and how they are assembled. And so the architecture piece is really something that you do ahead of time, and the framework is more something you do rather at the end. And because this document has both, it's very hard to say that we're going to ship it very early, because we don't really know, for instance, the answers of how exactly OAM is going to work. So if really we care about producing the architecture and shipping it early, because, as you said, we should ship this month, then I was wondering if we would consider actually splitting into architecture on the one hand and framework, which we would deliver pretty much when we close the working group. As you know, here is what we did, here is how it works, there are the components, here are, they're taken from here, there, that, and here is how they're assembled. Because I just don't see that we can ship architecture and framework, before very late in the process. So that's basically a question to you, Rick, and Yves.
So looking at the charter, I actually agree with you, because as you say, the architecture has to precede the framework logically, and the charter, as I read it and understand it is, in this phase of the working group's lifetime, we should be exploring the problem space, defining what we see the problems to be, analyzing the available technologies that exist within the IETF and at the link layers, and and that's pretty much it. And maybe the framework as a proposal of how we could proceed kind of covers the end of this working group cycle and would be a great starting point when we recharter. So if you don't mind splitting the document from a text perspective, then
No.
I would.
It's already structured pretty much that way. Already restructured at the previous publication to really say start with architecture and then put the framework as the second piece. So splitting should be easy, rather doable. The question really will be with Lou. Lou wants to do some important changes, and we'll have to see how Lou and I can collaborate to make that happen, following what Lou wants to achieve. But as we do that, I mean, splitting document is no big worry. The other question will be, how should I proceed? Should I just, for instance, cut it in two, just like it stands today, and so consider that both documents are adopted, or do I need to restart the second half as a personal document?
Very quickly before I let Lou jump in, I don't see, given that the working group kind of owns the complete document, I don't see any reason to reject the framework parts and push it back to you as a personal draft. Why not just keep it adopted? We seem to, that's too much process. Unless somebody even if somebody does think there's a problem, the text has already been adopted, even if we split the text into two documents. So
right, it seems like an unnecessary step. I think we should assume it's already adopted. However, I can see that there are a couple people in the queue. Lou, would you like to go ahead and comment?
You're a little low for me. I think you said ask if I wanted to comment. So I
yes. Go ahead, Lou.
Wrong. Okay. Oh, now you're great, by the way.
Thanks.
So just going to Pascal's reference to the comments that I have, I think these are comments not only from me, but from others. And so really would welcome if others would interested in joining, helping get the text there. But basically, the root of the comment is that the current architecture document is missing the cross-layer optimization or multi-layer optimization that is covered in much of the T's work and the internet sort of traffic engineering principles, where you can have cooperating network layers that each do their own optimization, as opposed to a single integrated optimization approach. That's really important when you have one set of technology or one set of operators supporting another set of operators. For example, if we were running DetNet over a 5G network, we wouldn't necessarily expect, unless you're the 5G operator, that you would be able to have full access to the 5G network. There was a liaison from what was it, a year ago or more, where the 3GPP said, here are the type of parameters you can expect across a 5G service interface. And those would not facilitate or support this type of raw architecture that's being shown here. So it's really the comment that I made a while ago, and I think resonated with others, is we really need to bring in the concept of multi-layer. And part of that is supporting use of DLEP to support that. And if there's others who want to work on it, I think we should, start setting up some maybe calls so we can get some progress on this, rather than just be held up by me not doing the writing assignment that I said I would do, which, of course, is not a good thing. So I apologize for that. That's it. Thank you.
Can I react to this?
Sure.
That's perfect. I mean, I've seen at DetNet there is something that they do very well. In the case of OAM, for instance, they have this periodic meeting where anybody can join. So it doesn't look like a Tiger team or something. Anybody can join, but still, it's a dedicated periodic meeting organized by DetNet. So you see Janos in particular attending the OAM one, and we do great progress on OAM thanks to this organization. So if you don't mind having RAW, being shepherding this kind of activity as well for the cross-layer or the architecture or the cross-layer piece of the architecture, I really think we could progress a lot more than the way we do it today.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would agree strongly with you.
Yeah, so that's definitely something the chairs can arrange.
Help
I mean,
facilitate.
we have the facility to set up. Interims are really cheap, so being able to set up Meet Echo, once every 2-3 weeks or whatever a sprint needs to be, to just have a quick focused meeting on are we going in the right direction? How are people doing? That's something we can do really easily. So I will make a note and take an action.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
it looks like we have several others in the
informal
queue.
meetings. Sorry.
Say again, Lou?
I would suggest those be informal meetings rather than formal interims. They'll just
Okay,
be
that's fine.
working meetings.
Okay, so in which case we'll take an action to try and set up a WebEx for and publish the link on the WebEx or Teams or Zoom or whatever, and publish the link on the mailing list so that it's open and it's public. We'll work out an elegant way of doing it, Lou. Good point.
But yes, I think that the DetNet group role models that very well, and we should follow suit. We have a couple others in the queue. Abdusalam, if you'd like to speak up, please take the floor.
Yes, good morning. My suggestion is to not split it now, the document, this draft as adopted. It's good to, when we review it, to be having the architecture and the framework together as we adopted it. So and actually it's also the second draft or the 01. So and let's say if we get to draft number 5 or 6, we can then split. But now I think it's a good stage that we see them together while reviewing them, and it's already only 40 pages, so I think it's okay. We can do it together, and then in the future maybe it's to the working group to split. If most they agree to split, and but I think for me, I don't agree now to split it to do documents. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Abdusalam. That's a good point. Maybe if it's good, particularly if we're going to try and really get some cycles on this, to just keep all the content together for now, and then maybe prior to IESG, remove one section. It's a valid point. Thank you. Janos.
Not too late, Rick, because at some point we want to make sure that the documents in isolation are complete. So if we want to keep them packaged together right now, we can make 2 major sections, and say this is the architecture, this is the framework. It's pretty much the way it's organized anyway. But if we want to progress the architecture and focus on it, we don't want to get too much distracted by the framework piece. So when we'll ask reviews and stuff and early reviews, at that time the split must have happened, because otherwise people will comment and on the whole thing and delay. It's gonna progress at the speed of the weakest link. So if we separate them, once we separate, it will be much faster for the piece that is priority, and the other one will be stuck, which is as expected.
Okay.
So basically, we are delaying ourselves to try to progress everything, when in fact we know we don't have the content for the framework. For instance, 2 a.m. we are missing content. Okay,
so can I make a request? You say that the document is pretty much in 2 sections. If on the next revision you can put an explicit section break between the architecture and the framework, to pretty much say from now on is the framework, this will go elsewhere, and then the split can be made fairly quickly. It's just to sort of do an interim step on there, particularly if we start to have some sort of focused meetings to talk about that document. Then
exactly. I mean, as soon as we have focused meeting, we want to progress the architecture from there, right? Because we're already late. So excellent. As soon as we want to focus on that piece, I mean, the rest will be dead weight.
And actually, I'm now arguing against Abdusalam's point. If both documents are working group documents and available through the data tracker for review and comment, then it's one click to move between one document and the other. So perhaps just keeping it in one document for convenience is not as convenient as we think.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, yeah. Janos, go ahead.
Thank you. I have, I guess, 2 comments and a question. So I fully agree with the comment made by Lou that the architecture should follow a layering model and capable of supporting all the raw technologies we have in the raw technologies draft actually. And I understand it's work to be done, and I agree that focus discussions could be helpful moving it along. And the other one is a question. Actually, I am a bit uncertain on the aspects of the framework and the architecture, because in my understanding of the charter, and as you just explained, Rick, I fully agree that the working group would be developing solutions if and when recharters, and it's sort of the exploration of technologies and what is the available requirements and so on at this stage. And I don't know which one is more of a solution, the framework or the architecture, and I don't know if we split what would be the order, but both of them stepping into our solution. And for now, it's maybe better not to split, as you just said, or multiple people. But I even if we wanted to split, I am not sure on the order. Like, I guess the one that is less of a solution would be first. But
yeah. So from my perspective, I think
thank you.
We can argue about the meaning of the word framework and the meaning of the word architecture. I think that the natural split for me is between a high-level description of an approach to solving it and the detailed solution proposal. So anything which really looks at we will do this like this should probably be a later document. And any text which says the problem to be solved could be done like this is probably the architecture framework. It's difficult and there's a lot of verbiage, but splitting the proposal from the solution, I think, is a good way forward.
Yeah, and exactly what I was trying to say at the very beginning. Here is what we want to do. Is what I'm used to calling the architecture. There are the big objects without really saying it's this draft or this RFC or anything like that. Whereas the framework really says, here is how it works, how we made it work, and we pick this component here, which happens to be RFC blah, etc., and we assemble them together. And we set this flag in that message or whatever, and that gives you the whole framework on how this thing works. That's my understanding. And I mean, Janos, since you were talking, I mean, we had the discussion recently at DetNet as well, right? And we seem to be in agreement that framework was more on the solution side. Right?
If that is people's understanding of the word framework, then I am fine with that. And I think this might also resolve one of the questions that appeared on the mailing list quite recently about whether the document should discuss technologies that are in progress in other SDOs such as IEEE or 3GPP, where we know they are working on time-sensitive networking for 802.11, for example, but it hasn't been standardized yet. So should we refer to it or should we not, because it's not a standard? I think naturally that splits. So in the architecture, one could say technologies at the link layer are being developed and examined which may enable this, but in the framework document, we need text which says, to do this, we use 802.11xy, which has now been standardized. So we then solve the question of should we have it, should we not have it in this document, where architecture, we can talk about the future, and framework, we talk about the fact as of now, as of publication. And I think that might solve that problem. Janos, did you have a comment? You've dropped out of the queue. I'm assuming no, so go ahead, Abdusalam.
My understanding of framework and architecture, actually both of them, they solve the problem. So it's mostly the architecture is more, we can say like the hardware and the software. Usually the software uses the hardware. So the framework is above the architecture. So anything in the architecture, it will affect the framework, but not the way around. So the framework comes after the architecture, as it's in the title saying architecture and a slash framework. So the framework comes after architecture and its solution. Both of them are important solutions for raw technologies.
Yes, I agree. I think we are in agreement, all of it, collectively. I think they're obviously English isn't everyone's national language, but I think we can define our own meanings for this conversation, and I think we are in agreement. So carry on, Pascal, because I know you're watching the time.
I'm still good. I'm still good. So basically, this is the slide which summarizes what we want to see in the architecture so far. And so basically, we described that there is this what we call OODA loop, and it's not a term from IETF. It's really quite an old term, which describes a loop which observes orient based on some previous knowledge, and that would be the PC, knowing the network and knowing the radios and making high-level decisions about structures. Decide, which is basically the per packet decision for which we instantiated this new component, the PSE, that will decide what we do with this packet to forward it in this wireless network. And act, which is really now, okay, the forwarding plane action, and that's the use of the parallel functions. So the architecture describes this OODA loop and provides already some information. So we don't have the cross layer, but provides already information about what the PSC does and how it's seen that it will be operating. It could be operating on the source node, on the ingress, in which case you need some form of quote-unquote source routing information in the packet to do what was decided by the ingress along the path. Or it could be more distributed decision, in which case the PSC or sub-functions of the PSC have to be distributed inside the mesh. So we describe all that. And at this level, it's architecture. If we say, here is exactly, we are going to use segment routing and we will have those bits, then we will have made the decisions about exactly what can be done at each hop. And that will be the framework in my book. Mm-hmm. And then we describe the use of the DetNet service plane and how we enrich what is typically do pre-auth in DetNet to get parallel, to get more timing. And if we do this kind of source routing information, then the hits and controls that we will need to have at the, as an extension to the DetNet service layer. So we describe all this, and that's the architecture piece. Next slide, please. So the status has not changed since last IETF. We have not progressed on document. The expectation is we would have time with Lou to progress, and we already discussed that it has not happened, but hopefully it will. We were wondering as well if there are any sections that could be missing. And so, yes, there is the use of DLIP as we discussed. There might be a high-level discussion about encapsulations, and that's where my other presentation of hop by hop, destination option, and source routing can be appropriate. And there was also the work that Yakov Stein has introduced at DetNet and RAW and everywhere about providing timing information in the packet. Basically, if this packet is scheduled, then there could be some information as part of this segment routing, source routing type of information about where this packet should be in my network at which time. So when you forward the packet, you know if you're ahead of time, delayed, blah, blah, blah. So that can help deliver all the packets in the due window of time, as opposed to accelerate packets which are already in advance. So basically, these are items that could be added to the document. Are there any other items, sections that people in this group think are missing beyond those three? We can go back to mailing list, but if something came out of mind of somebody, then that could be discussed. Okay, so, well, the two other slides are very much that we kind of improved quite a bit the terminology, and that was thanks to the OAM discussion in particular, but also for terms. There's one thing that RAW has distinguished, which is a bit less clear in the .NET architecture, which is the distinction between the flow and the path. The flow is basically in the water image. The flow is the water, and the path is the pipe. And actually, the cool thing about making the distinction is you can the pipe is the level at which we do networking, and the pipe is the level at which you decide what kind of processing. Every molecule that goes through this pipe has the same process. So the process is per path, not per flow, meaning if you mix multiple flows in a path, then all the packets of all the flows will be subject to the same operations along the path. And that becomes useful when you want to either merge flows into bigger pipes. Like I have those two pipes coming in, and I want to merge them into a bigger pipe, which is sized for both. Or when you have this pipe where you want to put both a water flow, but also something like OAM to measure. At that point, if you do your forwarding logic based on the flow indication, then you can't say, I'm going to process this OAM packets exactly the same way as the data packet, because they don't appear to be coming on the same flow. Operating at the path level, which is completely valid in the .NET architecture. The .NET architecture says we are placing flows on path. That's exactly what it's saying. If we understand and agree that we need to process things at the path level, then we don't have this problem of merging things anymore. It's just natural. We operate at the path. Once the ingress has placed a certain flow on that path, the flow will be processed as a member of that path and get to the egress of that path with the same treatment as everybody else along that path. So it's a concept that we had in RAW since inception. At .NET, that has not been so well discussed, at least in the case of IPv6, it's not really available. And that's why I started this hub-by-hub document that I will be discussing after. But for this slide here, yes, we have basically defined the flow and what we call the track by inheritance to previous work at the IETF. The track being a special type of path that can fork and join. I've looked at the terminology of path at the IETF, and for many groups, a path has to be serial. It's A, then B, then C, then D. It cannot be A, B, C, D, or F, G, H, I, and maybe merge at D and split again. A path is not like that for many working groups, including IETF, the path research. So yeah, I think using path is a bit misleading, and so far in the architecture we use the term track, which was really defined for this. Next slide, please. And please review this definition, because you'll see the number of properties. Now there's this concept of a subtrack, which is a subset of the track that will be used for a given packet. Different packets which are placed on the same track might be, due to PSC activity, might be effectively placed on different subtracks.
So
now the track.
A very quick question, sorry. Isn't a subtrack actually a path?
Not necessarily, because even a subtrack is it's still a track. It can have multiple.
It can be split again.
Paths.
Okay.
It's a collection of paths, and really some of them superimposing on other ones. I mean, Like if you look at just think about a sausage or an egg, right? An 8. You can have one path on top, one path in the middle, then you can have an S path, and so it's like 4 paths with just an 8. Yeah, and some people also define the path as being, you know, the experience of this packet. Where has this packet been between A and B? That's valid if A was maintained as a single entity. But with .NET, we are doing things like network coding, things like replication elimination. And so it's, even if you wanted to trace the path of a packet, you realize that this concept is gone.
Lou, I see Lou in the queue. Do you want to go ahead, Lou?
Actually came in queue to answer your comment. I think what you're describing matches well with the notion of protection paths that's shown up in traffic engineering, MPLS, .NET with pre-auth, and it would be really interesting to see how it differs from that. Have you looked at that prior work relating to protection and restoration in traffic engineering?
The things I'm aware of are things like MPLS TP, for instance, where you basically have 2 non-congruent paths. That's the most usual thing I'm used to. And those 2 are effectively paths because it's either sequence FBCD or sequence FGH. And you basically decide to use the plan B when the plan A shows issues. And in that case, the sequence of things are really paths. I would argue that with .NET, we already went beyond that concept because as soon as you do replication and then further elimination of a packet, how can you say which path that packet has taken? It turns into quantum mechanics, right? The packet has been through both paths. And so, but yes, I mean,
yeah, I'm not sure I'm following, but I think that might be a good discussion in these breakout meetings that we're going to start doing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We can talk about it there or on less. Thanks.
The premise is there is a lot of history with this term path, and you just point out. And so a lot of readers who are not used to what we are doing might misunderstand the text if we use the term path. And so we effectively have a concept of serial path where a packet comes in, goes out, same packet without any transformation, and then forwarded hop by hop by hop. And we call that a segment, and the track is actually a graph of segments. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so I mean, that's it for this architecture discussion. I think we did a lot of progress, so we agree that we will split. We agree that we have missing items. I listed some. I hope that the mailing list will come up with others. And then we will have those informal meetings where we'll refine everything that is already in there, plus what's missing. And in particular, we have this objective of cross-layer and the DLIP discussion with Lou. So I think we have ample work in front of us, so that's really good. Now, associated to that, we need to say, oh, what now can be a reasonable date for this work?
Yeah. So currently we have said November this year, which is obviously wrong. IETF113 is March next year. I don't think that will be ready for IESG review March next year. I think one more discussion I would be very pleased if we can get to the state where at the next IETF, everyone involved in reviewing the current document, submitting changes, contributing, joining the informal meetings is happy, and we can then present where we are and perhaps go for IESG review maybe May, April. What do people think? Is that too ambitious?
I mean, if you do this, if we do this bi-weekly or something, core, and yeah, I don't say we will be ready by next IETF, will not, but doing last call, having some discussions at next IETF and deciding to do last call at that time or soon after next IETF. That looks doable, I guess.
Yeah.
We already
Okay.
have a lot of good stuff in that document.
And if we're splitting out the framework, then we are reducing some of the content as well. So
yes, and we'll focus on the architecture, so we'll be faster.
Okay, I'm going to say May, because that means we should be ready for last call. That gives us maybe a month of last call, and then so last call in March, IETF. Last call ends mid-April. IESG review. We start. Yeah. So okay, I'm going to say May because April, I think, 1st of May. So I'll say May for architecture.
But then we need to create a new entry for framework, right?
Yeah, we need to create a milestone for framework and a document for framework, but I would say that is late, and I will
way later. Yes, you can say 2023 just to create an entry, but
well,
probably when we think we're gonna close the group or repurpose.
Let's say November 2022.
Whoa, that's optimistic.
Yep, let's call it ambitious.
It's really because we have dependencies, right? I'm thinking about OEM, but it might be that the cross-layer story is a lot of work as well, because we'll have to review. I don't know how deep we can go, depending on which technology we talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also understand there's the dependencies on the OEM. We have an item on the milestones, which is the evaluation of existing the gap analysis document, and I'm wondering whether we can address the gap analysis as actually the framework. So no, maybe not. So the framework will define what we need, and the gap analysis will define what exists, and a combination of the two should give the gap. So those two need to be in lockstep. So they are mid-23, I think. I'm terrible at estimating. So but I'm going to say mid-2023 for those, just for now. I see it. Abdusalam, you have a comment. Please go ahead.
Yes, I think deciding the time is better to be done on the list, because it's not easy. And also, I will agree with the authors. They are the most expert. They can know the timing and everything. As Pascal said, I think we go for what the authors say, and then we can discuss on the list to make it easier to go forward. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say May for architecture, because I think people think that sounds reasonable. Framework we can discuss. It will be later. I think is fine. So I have a question, Pascal, about the technologies draft.
Which is next, right? That's fine. Yeah.
You do have that next. Okay. Cool. I was looking at my slides. I can't find the slide for that because I have lost it.
Oh. If I fail to push them, then I still have them on my desk, so I can share if you don't find them.
Can you share and push them afterwards, and then everyone can have a copy? Yeah.
I did not push them. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So.
And just so you know, this segment we're running pretty late. We had a lot of extra time. But I think we're about 20 minutes over for this section. And I know you disappear. When do you disappear?
I've got them. I found them. It's PowerPoint. That's why I can't see them. I'll share. Sorry.
But normally they're automatically translated by the tool, right? When
Yeah, this one did not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I have it already.
Something. I don't know.
Why is this not? Why is this not appearing? Sorry, I'm just now trying to make PowerPoint behave. There we go. Boom, boom, boom.
Can you see? I'll be quick on this one.
Yeah, could you? Can you see that?
Next slide.
Yeah.
Could you make it bigger, or because it's just a piece of screen?
It's full screen on my machine.
Yeah, but the slide itself is it's just a little bit of your screen.
Is that better? Is that worse? I'm trying to
Yes, if you drag this, you can also.
drag that.
Yeah, that's better. There's also normally a way to fold the top, but that's okay. Okay, if you see next to the question mark top right, you must have a folding button, which would basically allow you to hide the menu. This will make a big difference. Okay, so this is a draft that's been there forever. I did many groups which do the sort of thing we're doing, like LP1 recently. They tend to basically document the technologies they're working on, so as to provide, a layman of what can be achieved with those technologies. And in the case of RAW, we kind of selected Wi-Fi 6 and above, 5G and above, 1540 ACH, on which 6TiSCH has been operating and did a lot of work. And this new technology, LDAX, that we already discussed, and that Niels will be talking about a bit later. That's already past last call. So we basically collectively, I mean, this is a huge number of authors from all those technologies collectively came and put together this draft, where we provide pretty much the same level of information for each technology, so people can get their mind and what can be achieved. In particular, where do they come from, and what kind of deterministic properties can be achieved with those technologies. So we've done that. Next slide, please. And the doc is very, very stable. We had this review by Rocco. Thank you so much, Rocco, for this. Where actually Rocco went very, very deep into the text and the exact details of how things are set to make sure they are really correct. And then there was this discussion between Rocco and Dave, and really a lot of that was beyond me. It was really, really the details of what was done and how it was done. So after the conclusion of that work, I'm really happy with the content of the document in general. Also thanks to Chavi for 6TiSCH text, and also I did some realignment with the 6TiSCH architecture, which is published as RFC now. And the bottom line is now is when we should have submitted to ISG, and I agree that it's what we should do. I mean, I think we are ready for our Go Plus call. And if we make it 2 weeks, we can still deliver in time. Cheers.
Perfect. So this was the, I was rereading the comments on this, and the comment that was really raised was whether we should discuss, it's the discussing standards in progress in other SDOs. So referring to...
We were talking about that in the architecture, but that's really where it took place, yeah.
Yeah, it took place in here. So my personal opinion is that I think it's perfectly valid to have text that says other SDOs are working on this problem. TSN in 802.11 is a classic example, but I don't think we should refer to standards that aren't yet in existence. So calling out specific 802.11 XE or whatever it is, I don't know the numbers well, letters, is a mistake, but I think it's perfectly valid to say work is happening at the time of this document. It has not been standardized, but it is happening. I think that is a compromise that works without stating things which aren't true.
Yeah, we can still say the work is happening at TG blah, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty much what we do. I mean, I really have to revisit, but my memory is when we hint about B, for instance, in the case of .11, that's what we do.
Okay, Janos, I see you in the queue, and I know you were one of the people raising this. Do you have an opinion? Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to point out first what I wrote in my last email, that I would really like to see this one progressing, and really happy for all the contributions. And I guess the reason I wrote an article raising this question was that I guess we sort of get into a bit gray areas when yes, it's understood that the work is ongoing, like the .11 TGB, which will specify actually Wi-Fi 7, and divided into sub-work items and so on. But when it gets to, so it's absolutely good to refer to it. It's approved project, ongoing work, it's happening, no question. But when it comes to sort of individual contributions, like, I mean, contributions that are at the level of individuals not adopted yet by the working group, I guess I would say maybe in IEEE mechanics, they are not there in the draft yet. Like draft 2.0 of TGB is coming in March, which will include sort of the first, they call it release or package of features, and TSN is actually in the second release, so it's not even there in the draft. It's hard to guess what the working group will actually approve or accept. So that's the question mark. And there were a couple of comments or aspects, let's put it this way, where I didn't see the agreement coming between Dave and Rocco. Very few, but still very few left open, and that's why I suggested maybe to make this decision point on in general what goes into the document that could help concluding open items. Thank you.
Thanks, Janusz. So I
So,
think really, as I see it, there is there is a task for Rocco and for Dave, and maybe something for Janusz there as well, to say, to review the references to technologies, particularly in other SDOs that they understand. I know Janusz is very deeply involved with IEEE, to say this one is correct, this reference is correct, this reference is work in progress, and this reference is still personal. So we could say something like, there is interest in it, because I think it's obvious that there is interest, but without saying, oh, and it is happening because it has not been ratified by IEEE. I don't know about the 6-dish example, but it's probably worth just doing that double check. I would suggest that's probably part of the last call, because it's a kind of a validation pass rather than a new content. I know I've just looked down the attendees, Rocco and Dave Cavalcanti, neither are involved. So I don't know if anyone can reach out to them. If we do a 4-week last call, I would hope that that is enough time for people to look at it. Does anyone have an opinion?
That
I'm
would
good.
certainly suss out. I mean, this is Eve. I've been having trouble with my audio. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think that the 4-week last call would suss out the half a dozen or so unresolved back and forth that Rocco and Dave were having about the precise wording of the revisions, and that's maybe half a dozen out of many dozen that were provided, which I thought was really a great effort. So I'm in agreement with being specific in the wording about the maturity of the various documents, and the different classifications, whether they're adopted, wending towards adoption, or personal. And so I think some of this is a specificity issue. It's not a lack of interest. It's just if we can get everyone to agree on the accurate portrayal of the maturity, that then we can progress this and
So
put it up for last call.
Eve, if you and I take an action that when we send out the last call message to the mailing list, we explicitly state that we require the references to be reviewed by people who are familiar with the SDOs to which we refer, then and you and I can send a personal mail to Rocco and Dave saying, you missed out, but we'd really like you to look at this as well. And then I think that will be obvious to everyone involved. Does that sound reasonable?
It sounds reasonable to me. Does it sound reasonable to the working group?
And I see that Rocco is with us as well.
I didn't
Dave
see
is
him on the
not.
list. Oh, Rocco is in the queue. Go ahead, Rocco, speak.
Yeah, yes, I'm here. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you discussed. I think most of the comments related to ongoing projects. There is one or two related to proprietary solutions that have been used in Wi-Fi 6, which I feel they should not be there. They are not in any standard, not even in an ongoing project. And of course, then there is another comment, which is besides these two main aspects, but that can be sorted out just as usual.
Okay, understood. I would suggest on the even if people are doing proprietary work, that still shows that there is interest in the community to solve the problem. Even if it is not being done in an SDO, somebody thinks it's important to do.
Yes, we need to qualify stuff, right? Don't say there is this without saying, hey, it's proprietary or it's research or whatever. I mean, even if there are papers and research, I mean, all this is good to know. We need to be very clear. That's the point. I mean,
yeah, agreed. Janos, go ahead, and then we should probably move on because of time.
I'm not sure on the proprietary because I think it's not available for the generic public. It's proprietary, so like it's not a reliable available wireless if it is not available. Like if it has made it into a standard, then it's everybody can buy it or have access or. But you know all the problems with proprietary vendor locking, everything. It's not.
My point was that the technologies document is talking about these are the technologies that exist, that are appearing, that could be used in order to enable reliable, available wireless. As a general review of the state of the art. So if there are proprietary solutions, that shows that there is interest in solving some of the problems at the link layer. And if they were to become open standards, then they could be used by whatever raw technologies we develop at layer 3. It demonstrates there is interest, even if it may not be that useful for an SDO like the IETF in order to build on. But you can't deny it exists. Perhaps let's take this offline. But I think we have a way forwards.
Yeah, I'm a bit between the two. I'm convinced by both of you. You're saying the opposite, but you're both very convincing. Okay.
Mailing list.
Can we move to the third presentation, maybe?
Third presentation, yes. Let me stop sharing. Let me stop sharing that. Let me find the next. Share my screen. Too many clicks. The title is must match title, and it's there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes. So next slide, please.
And actually, and in the interest of fitting in the other presentations, I'm going to ask you to accelerate this talk.
Okay, well.
Shall I click the magic time button, Eve?
Go for it.
How long has he got?
I think you've got really more like 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, let me just rush through this. So basically, I already discussed, the concept of path versus flow, and the idea that we should be forwarding the path is the network layer thing, whereas the flow is the upper layer thing. And so, since we are network layer, we should basically operate on the concept of path, where multiple application flows can be mixed and extracted from blah. So as you know, .NET has two main sublayers, that the forwarding sublayer, where really you forward the packet, and it's kind of more dumb operation but has to be, for instance, scheduled. Whereas the service is where you do those higher level operations like pre-auth, replication elimination. So most of Pareo, but not all of Pareo that is there. I looked at how we could basically signal the DetNet information that's not signaled so far at DetNet. DetNet pretty much says use the flow, and that's going to be it. And then another flow is another setup and another treatment. So you have to configure the network for every damn flow. And that's probably not very practical, because probably the pipes have a longer lifetime than the individual application flows in there. So IPv6 has three main types of extension headers. The hop by hop, which has to be processed by every hop but can be ignored. The destination option, which is supposed to be processed by the destination of the packet, and this basically source route header, like segment routing header. And interestingly, if you place a destination option before a routing header, the destination is the next hop in the routing header, meaning that you can have something in destination option and have it processed by every node which appear in the segment routing or source routing header, meaning that you could possibly use hop by hop for the forwarding, because the forwarding has to be observed at every hop necessarily. And you could use either hop by hop, because it can be ignored, or a combination of destination option and source routing to signal the service sublayer. So the draft basically discusses all this. The big value is to completely separate the application, the flows from the network operation, which allows you to merge and multiple flows and OAM inside the same path and have the same treatment. Can we skim through the slide, just see if there is one we'd like to discuss before I leave? This just shows, the packet, and as you see, the hop by hop. Just 1 point on that one. The hop by hop is the first thing after the IPv6 header. And as you know, one of the difficulties in that space is to not to have to go deep into the packet, because sometimes the silicon, the ASICs, will not process more than less than 100 bytes or this kind of number, meaning that if the transport is pushed a little back, then there is no way for the hardware to even detect what the DetNet flow is. Having it very early in the packet is very easy, fixed place for the hardware, and now we can do more stuff in hardware. So that's why using hop by hop is kind of convincing. Next slide. Next, please. Okay, so forget it. But if you want to read out the slides, you'll find the requirement that we're looking at. So basically, this draft is, well, the only one I'm aware of where we effectively used the IPv6 to signal DetNet stuff beyond, the application flow. And so that's why I proposed it to DetNet. We need it for RAW because we have this concept of path and we have this concept of flow. But I believe that was useful beyond RAW, so that's why I published it to DetNet. Next slide. And I think we're done for Q&A. Yeah, it's still a personal submission. There are basically three information there. So the redundancy, you can think that as a sequence counter, but you can place a lot more stuff than plain sequence counters. And there are things which can be considered redundant and some others which will not be considered as redundant. For instance, if you do network coding, then you need to know which packet you're in and then which code that is. And so when you reorder, you want to reorder for just the packet thing, not for the fragments. But when you eliminate, you don't want to eliminate different fragments. Path option is typically what you expect for DetNet, something which has to be observed at every hop. And the loose path option is more, if you don't do segment routing, then you could do that. It's more loose if you want to go in a large domain and you want to maybe not do DetNet, but something close on the one. And that's pretty much it for this document. So happy for questions, reviews, all this would help.
So Pascal, you're contributing this to DetNet, but it is
I'm contributing this to DetNet because even if it comes from how we describe the raw architecture and this separation of flow and pipe really. And we do IPv6. DetNet has MPLS where they can do a lot more stuff. But in the case of IPv6, it's just subpar versus MPLS. So I wanted to get as much possibilities and possibly even a little bit more with IPv6 than with MPLS. The cool thing with IPv6 is you don't really have to have this explicit stack and have to wonder if you have to go beyond the first information in the stack to or top of stack to find this other information. Here we can really structure stuff. And since we can have TLVs, we can really say, oh, the redundancy is expressed this way. So that's why, I mean, it was sad that it was so poor in the case of IPv6. And I really wanted to make it a lot more richer. And that's what I propose.
Okay, thank you very much, Pascal. I'm watching the clock, so I think that should be everything, unless we have anyone in the queue, which I don't see. Okay, so we have 45 minutes left. We actually have two presentations, so we have a little bit of time for a Q&A at the end. Pascal, I know you've got a conflict, so we may lose you for the rest of the session, but it's your choice, obviously.
I'll be watching through YouTube, I guess.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Rick, and Eve.
No problem. No problem. So next we have I've lost the agenda.
It's Carlos.
It's Carlos.
Cases.
So Carlos, are you happy presenting your own slides, or do you want to shout next at me?
Maybe you can share, because I'm joining through an iPad and maybe it's not that easy. Okay.
Sorry, so you want me to share? Okay.
Yes, please.
No problem.
It'll be short anyway.
Let me just find them. Everybody always names their slides raw slides, and I look at them going, I don't know which slides those are. Raw use cases.
And what's on your T-shirt? It looks great. What is it? It's something with Darth Vader.
Yes.
There we go. Okay,
thanks. So, well, very shortly, because for the sake of time. By the way, I hear a lot of echo. I'm not sure it's only me. But anyway, I'll try to do it quick. So, this is a short update of the raw use cases draft. Next slide, please. So, just a reminder of what we have in the draft. We are covering these 8 use cases in the draft. The aeronautical communications, the amusement parks, wireless for industrial applications, pro audio and video, wireless gaming, UAV and V2V platooning and control, edge robotic control, and emergencies. And for each of them, we have the following structure. Please go next. Basically, first we describe the use case, then we go into the specifics, the challenges, the need for wireless, and then at the very end, the specific requirements for RAW. Next slide, please. So with this in mind, we presented this last time in IETF111, and since then, basically what we have done in the draft is to fix several editorial needs with some improvements, and then we have some discussions in the last IETF meetings about this, including some discussions and text about non-latency critical communications. So we have done that in the last version of the document. We have added a subsection called non-latency critical communications under section X.4 requirements for RAW for each of the use cases, where we discuss about non-latency critical requirements or communications. We also asked in the last IETF meeting about getting some good reviews before going to working group last call. We received one from Corina. Thanks a lot. Most of the comments were editorial. We are working in a new revision that will be available soon after this meeting. Next slide, please. So then regarding next steps, and going back to the point that the chairs made at the beginning about the time frame. So I would like to ask once again to the working group for feedback if you think that there is something that needs to be updated, improved, add, remove, explain in a different way. This is the moment, because we the authors believe that we are ready for working group last call. So we can either decide to get some additional deep reviews before or do that through the working group last call. That's a question for the chairs to decide, because from our side we are ready for going working group last call.
Okay. Thank you, Carlos. My only question, apart from yes, I need to do a good review myself, and that applies to all the other working group members as well, please. How does the use cases document align with the industrial requirements? Because I know this was the industrial requirements sort of arrived after the use cases document was started. Do you believe that you have aligned enough with or have you absorbed content from the industrial requirements that you need for the use cases, or do you still think there's work there?
So basically what we did, the industrial requirement goes in more detail, so ours is more high level. And we added a cross-reference to the industrial requirements for like further details. There is this additional document. This was at that time when we did it, I think was 2 IETF meetings before. What we believe that the authors from both drafts, that makes sense. But of course, it would be good if we can have some feedback from the working group. From the use cases document, we are open to do whatever the working group feels is best, of course.
Okay. So yeah, thank you. So it sounds to me that the authors of the use cases document believe they have aligned and referred to the industrial requirements document. Great. So yeah, working group, some reviews, and I think we will ask for last call on this. Eve, do you have comment?
What you've said, which is that we probably should review it ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the resolution of the cross-reference between the two related documents has been achieved, and that was the topic of discussion last time.
Yeah, having a normative reference between the two will force them to be published in lockstep, but we can go through the working group last call, we can do IESG review and so on without having to wait for the other document, but that's a problem for another day. So I'm conscious that we have public holidays in various countries and so on running up to the winter break. So I'm tempted to say after this IETF meeting, we will probably put a 4-week last call to give people a little bit of time to do some further reviews. Is that acceptable to you, Carlos?
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect, fine, thanks.
Okay. I shall make a note. Eve, does that make sense to you as well? Because I can't talk offline to you during the meeting.
Yes.
Okay, I shall make a note of that. Anyone else got any comment, or shall we move on to the next presentation? Let me just make a note.
External notes needed. We're going to have to re-listen to it anyway and take notes.
Yeah, I'm scribbling notes as we go.
Don't worry, I'll be re-listening to the video.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Right, I shall stop sharing that. Thank you very much, Carlos. Next, we have Niels to give us an update on LDEX. Niels, are you happy to present grant preloaded slides? There we go. I can click the button.
Hey everyone. So that's not what I want to do. Apparently I want to share my screen.
Oh, I have to grant screen access. There we go. Lots of buttons.
Yeah, it's confusing. I think that's the right one, yeah. All right, tell me if you see something.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So welcome everyone. It's good to be back. Because last time I didn't have the chance to present any updates. Now we have made many updates, so let's delve in. We're currently at version 09 of the draft. The topic of the entire thing is the L-band Digital Aeronautical Communication System, called in short LDAX. Here's the note well, and this is now the official title of the entire thing with the abstract here. Please note that apart from reliability and availability for IP connectivity over LDAX, we added security here in the abstract because it was one of the major updates that we did. Here you can see the changes on the left-hand side from the previous document and right-hand side and now the current version. As you can see, we streamlined a lot. So the biggest thing that has happened is basically that we've seen some overlapping details and try to merge them to make reading through the document as smooth and easy for an audience as possible. So that was probably the biggest thing that happened over the course of the last 3 months, just really having external reviewers going through the thing and then saying, hey, if you move that kind of information there, or I'm missing that piece here. That was the most important thing we did. Also, we received feedback from the Writing Directorate. We incorporated that here. And as you can see, so the blue dots, the biggest thing that we changed is the chapter 9 with security. But also we worked on the introduction. We worked on the LDAX protocol stack to make it a little bit more clear. And then also worked a lot on the normative and informative references, just added the latest publications on the entire thing. So, as I said, so we addressed the entire feedback from the Writing Directorate, and we uploaded the version 09. We replied to Thomas Razi, and I think with that, at least the open issues should be addressed. I'm happy to hear some feedback on that. Again, references streamlined the work. And as I said, the biggest thing was reworking the LDAX security section. Also, the thing was that we wanted to add post-quantum security to the overall LDAX security architecture because that hasn't been done yet. So that is the overall picture. Now to the single chapters. So we got a lot of questions what LDAX actually is. And well, LDAX is a wireless communication system for safety-related communications related to safety and security of a flight and regularity of a flight, meaning that you have several ground stations, you have a radio in the aircraft, and only safety critical information is transmitted via LDAX. So that means prior to that, it was the VDL Mode 2 radio that was done, that has done this kind of task. Previous, even later back, everything was communicated via ACARS. And now LDAX is, from the view of ICAO, is basically an access technology, a network access technology, basically just enabling the data link, as I said, between aircraft and ground, with data flowing, for instance, between airlines and the aircraft, or the network operators and the aircraft. And because there have been so many changes in regulatory documents, so for instance, ICAO has worked on something, so ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, has worked on the document 9896 in the version 03, specifying the aeronautical telecommunications network, that's the ATN, over Internet protocols infrastructure. And what they did basically was saying, hey, until now, the entire data was transmitted by ACAS, then ATN OSI, and now we really want to move it to IP, and in that regards to IPv6. And so other regulatory organizations such as RTCA, RINC, or EuroK updated their respective documents and also published new ones that I mentioned here. Because one of the biggest questions that we received is basically, so yes, now we know what LDAX is, but what kind of traffic will flow over it? So LDAX will be an access network technology for the ATN IPS plans of ICAO. And another question that we received is, okay, so the current plan is that LDAX will roll out starting 2024, probably due to COVID. It'll be a little bit later. Maybe 2026, maybe even 2028. But the thing is, the initial rollout will start in Europe, and then probably Asia has a large demands. The US is the FAA is even starting to integrate LDAX into the roadmap. So it will probably start in Europe, then go to Asia, and then to US, and maybe in 10, 15 years it will be available worldwide. Next up was the characteristics of LDAX. So first we said, okay, from the previous systems, such as VDL Mode 2, which doesn't have, for instance, a message prioritization, It doesn't have security. So we just said, what are the new things? What are the characteristics? So it's a very robust system because in the L band, so just on the frequency band, there's pretty little space left. So it had to be built as an inline system. And then we clarified again how the entire subnetwork, but also the protocol stack of LDAX works. So here's basically the idea that via an access router, then there's an air to ground router. The entire thing goes to the aeronautical telecommunications network, and via the access router, several ground stations, let's say over Europe, are connected to that one, and their user plane data is transmitted between A's and G's. Then for the protocol stack, that was basically just a clarification of how the entire thing looks with LDAX, and that IPv6 will probably be the traffic on the network layer that LDAX will serve. Now to the biggest change, security. As I said, LDAX is regarded as a network access technology in the AT&IPS frame, and several documents pretty strictly clarify what kind of requirements those technologies have to have, such as access protection mechanisms, such as certain latency that it has to support. For instance, there's a document, the RTC 80350A, that specifies for a certain kind of message type, and those message types is what LDAX is going to be for in the future, that within 10 seconds this message has to be delivered. Okay. The thing is, 10 seconds doesn't look like a lot, does look like a lot of time. But the thing is, if you add authentication procedures, key establishment procedures, so basically the initial part of the security to it, and then after that is done, then the message has to go through. The 10 seconds in, for instance, very worst case situations where the link is very weak. So for instance, you're at the edge of a cell, and the bit error rate goes up, this can be a problem. So the entire thing had to be designed with that in mind, that whatever you do, the 10 seconds is not to be touched. And then we presented in that chapter the distinction between user and control data protection of LDAX, because there's pretty clear information on how user data is to be protected. For instance, there's safety critical user data, ATS data, that mostly needs integrity and authenticity protection, but then there's also airline data, business data, and obviously that needs to be encrypted. So we had to make this distinction between those two within the user data space. And now for the control data space, so the entire thing, basically what keeps LDAX alive, the most important thing was that it's available and nobody can actually modify, for instance, resource allocations, because resource allocations is what makes aircraft or ground stations allowed to send user data. So with those distinctions in mind, we clarified that pretty much now in the security section. We laid out an LDAX public key infrastructure with corresponding certificates. And then we went over the entire cell attachment procedure. So the thing where an aircraft enters a ground, basically an LDAX cell, so comes into the vicinity of a ground station, does basic communications and enablement, and that's during the cell entry procedure. Now both can communicate, and then there's the possibility to do the entire authentication key establishment thing in a second step called make, so mutual authentication key establishment. So we clarified that also why those two things are separated. And then we went on and clarified security levels for LDAX, because as a rollout time will, as I said, be in like probably 2, 3, worst case 5 years. Elliptic curve will probably be fine. So we need to save a lot of security data, obviously, because every bit that you send in terms of security data is a bit that you lose in terms of actual payload. So here, the most important design goal is that you have to save on the security data bandwidth, meaning that the elliptic curve is quite elegant, also with curve compression, stuff like that, so you can save a lot of data. But then when you look at post-quantum security, for instance, for key encapsulation or signatures, then you will realize, oh boy, you run into 10 times the traffic, even 20 times the traffic, because even the smallest and slimmest lightweight crypto in post-quantum can be quite a lot to transport. And so we identified 2 schemes and mentioned them in the document, so this is one way forward. Then again, on the user data protection part, we have the distinction between air traffic services, so safety critical stuff, and airline operational control data. And the one thing has to be absolutely integrity, authenticity protected, and the other thing has to be encrypted. So we suggested 2 different algorithms to do that. Lastly, to the control channel part, as I said, this is where the magic of LDAX happens, because here on the left-hand side, you can see the superframe structure of LDAX going for 240 milliseconds. At the beginning of a superframe, you have the broadcast channel at the top. This is where a ground station basically says, hey, I'm here. Please talk to me. And the random access channel, that's the one below, the RACH, R-A-C-H. This is where an aircraft can request access to a cell. And the problem is, due to other reasons, it's hard to put in security here. So we said, no, we don't want to put security here. But where security is needed, absolutely needed, is in the dedicated and common control channel on the right-hand side. So CCCH is the common control and DCCH, because the common control is where aircraft are told when they are allowed to send user data. And in the dedicated control, aircraft demand a certain amount of user data to be sent. And so you have to be sure that whoever is requesting resources here is actually allowed to do that. And this is why protection mechanisms must be in place here. And so this is what we did with the security chapter. We clarified all those open points, and also added that the entire thing is work in progress. So the entire standard is obviously not done. But this is what we are laying out now for review, because we got some requests on how is security handled in detail. And this is what we wanted to offer here in the document. A high-level view that helps understand the reader, the design choices we made. And I think that's it from my side. Those were the updates. I think we addressed the feedback that we received thus far. And now my question would be to John Scudder, how the entire thing will proceed from here, also with from the chairs, because we answered the feedback that we got, and now I'm like, okay, what's next? So thank you.
Thank you, Niels. I can answer what's next. We are still waiting for other review feedback from the other areas. So IESG review goes to all the areas. Routing, obviously, are moving faster than everyone else at the moment. So you got your review back from them very quickly. I imagine security, as with all these things, there are the various area reviewers have a queue. I imagine security are going to take their time on this, because this is complex. And actually, in my experience, the security area always give really good reviews, but they take their time. So there will be more reviews coming back from other areas. And I'm afraid to say this does just take a bit of time. So a little bit of patience. Does that answer? Cool. So...
So just since I was asked to comment also, to the extent that I can kick those reviews along faster, I will do so.
Thanks, John. I think for things like ops and int area and things like that, it will be a quick text editorial read to see whether they can understand it. I can't see that they're going to have much operational comments, but I may be wrong. I don't know how transport are going to care too much. They may say, why aren't you doing this in the transport area? But that's a discussion for the AD and the chairs to have with them. But it's fine. It's working.
Right. I mean, the one that I think we have to look out for is a security one, and that's the one I'll talk with those ADs about, expediting it. Yeah,
because I see this as complex, and they're going to need a bit of warning about this, because it's a complex piece. Yeah. Can I make a request to the working group? Of course, in light of the reviews, the text is changing. As I said before, can you have a chance, working group members, just to have a reread and check that you're happy with the changes that have been happening? Because this is a working group document, so we all need to be aware of that. I mean, it's kind of left or is on its way out of the working group, but we need to confirm that we are still happy with the changes that are happening. I have confidence that we will be, but it's worth double checking. Eve, do you have anything to add?
looks great. Thank you for all the hard work.
Yeah, good work, guys. This is a mighty document. So yeah, thank you. So thank you, Niels. I think we have now got to the last 20 minutes of the session. So really open mic, questions, comment. Anyone want to add anything? Now is your chance. Resounding silence. It's either midnight at your local time and you've fallen asleep at your desk, or we have
you're
pleased
finally
you.
awake, as in my case.
So just looking down my list of notes, the chairs will set up some informal interim, maybe bi-weekly meetings, depending on public holidays, for a chance to really get on top of the raw architecture. We will be updating some of the milestones based on some of the feedback we've had so far. We will guess some of the far off ones. We will set more realistic milestones for some of the near ones. Hopefully that will please John and he can then click approve to some of our updates. Working group last call for the technologies draft. It will be a 4-week last call with a request for please everybody review the references, particularly those of you with influence or understanding of the referenced SDOs. The use cases, again, we'll put a 4-week on there because we'll have 2 working group last calls happening at the same time and public holidays, and to give everyone a chance to review that as well. But otherwise, that looks pretty good. We'll have some documents in working group last call. We've got LDAX in IESG review. We should get some RFCs coming out of this group sometime next year, because the editors always take a little bit of time to do it properly, which is nice. But I think we can be pleased as a working group that we're producing things or documents of value, which is important. So well done, but it does rely on everyone's good reviews as well. Eve, do you have anything to add? I feel like I've been talking for hours.
No, I've been grateful so that I haven't had to be entirely
entirely awake.
Entirely awake. So I'm quite grateful, but actually I will express my gratitude as well that things have progressed and that the discussions have been both respectful but very candid and honest, and that we're working through some of the tussles in the discussions around drafts and references and things like that. So thank you to everybody.
What I haven't done is looked at any of the meeting notes. I don't know.
There are none. So that's why I will take the AR to re-listen to the video and take notes at that time.
Oh, thank you, Eve. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we'll the chairs will take an action to try and produce some meeting notes. That will take a little bit of delay. So John, when you send us the mandatory email in 4 days' time saying please update your minutes, upload your minutes, we will be composing the minutes. Just for the record, you will be able to find the video transcript of this entire meeting on YouTube at some point. The IETF publishes everything on YouTube, so you can point to your friends and relatives.
Quite quick. The turnaround is quite quick. I've been, watching things that I've missed over the last few days, so it's been quite helpful.
Brilliant. Okay. In which case, I'm tempted to close. Eve, any objection?
Yes,
John,
I think we should give you back some of your morning or evening, whatever time zone you're in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your attendance. Oh, John makes a comment in the chat to say that you can use YouTube auto transcription. Hey, that might save us some time. It might take some post editing.
No, I think it's fine to re-listen. It sort of solidifies things. It's okay.
It's not a
thank you. That is a great suggestion. We'll try not to cheat. Oh, look at this. Lou is saying that'll be very helpful. Okay, well, listen, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your participation and contributions.
And I'll
And
probably
we
see
will
most of
catch
you in
you.
DetNet when DetNet happens this week. I can't see the agenda in front of me, but otherwise, thank you very much.
It's
We will be
tomorrow.
holding a meeting at IETF113, which is in Bangkok, allegedly in person. COVID willing, transport permissions willing. May see some of you in person, may be attending virtually. Not sure what my situation is, but we plan to hold a meeting there. Pascal is back. Pascal, you're in the
Yes,
queue.
Rick, I've heard that it won't be in Bangkok. I mean, the latest noise I heard, valid or not, I can't say, but looks valid, is it could effectively take place in person, but most probably in the US. And not in Bangkok. Bangkok, I think, is, don't think about it.
Okay. Yeah. It was. I looked at the main IETF website and it said 113 in Bangkok, and I was.
I can no longer remember what things I know are public and what things I know are private. But I'm 99% sure that during the plenary, Lars said that it will not be in Bangkok. So I don't think I'm giving too much away.
Okay. It would be nice to meet you in person.
Dominic says in the chat, I heard EU rather than not US. I think that Lars also said that at the mic, so I'll just confirm that as well.
Okay. I missed the announcement, obviously, but it would be nice to meet again in person, COVID restrictions permitting. So we will, the key point is, we will be holding a RAW session for IETF 113, where we will present...
I will say, oh, sorry, go ahead. We'll present
where the authors of these various documents will hopefully be requesting working group last call for things like the raw architecture draft, and we'll be celebrating the RFC editor status of various things. So that'll be good.
Right.
Go ahead, Eve.
Oh, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Maybe it'll come.
In which case, that's probably our call.
I know what it was.
Okay.
No, I know what it was. We have never met in person. We had the unlucky situation that our first IETF was the March IETF as COVID hit. And so It would be lovely to meet in person, since we never have.
Yes, because we only did the BOF in person. So yeah, the RAW working group has never met in person. There we go. That's a bit of IETF history for people. So yeah, fingers crossed. Okay. I'm gonna draw it to a close there and say thank you very much, everyone, and speak to you later on and at the next IETF, if not before. Okay.
Thank you all.
I don't know how to close the session, by the way.
All the way to the right at the top, it says "Leave the room." It looks like a gas station pump.
But that's
I'm
me
not exactly
leaving the room.
sure what.
I don't think it. I think the room will stay open for another quarter of an hour, but I'm
Well, we
going
can
to
stop the
leave it.
recording. That's the other.
Yeah.
Thing we can do.
In which case, I should try and. I don't know how. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to depart briefly. I'll see you in some other session at some point this IETF. Take it steady.
Bye-bye.